Biggest conversation, LBC 97.3.
It's 9 o'clock on Friday the 20th of September, and that means it's time for Call Clegg. Sorry, I got a bit of a cough. With me, Nick Clegg, here on LBC 97.3. So I can take your questions for the next half an hour. If you want to get involved, here's how you can do it. Call on 0845 6060 973. Email at nickclegg@lbc.co.uk. And of course, you can watch on the website lbc.co.uk.
And I do hope people are watching, Mr. Clegg, because these have been rushed down. I'm just going to enjoy my morning cup of coffee, which is in my Nick Clegg mug. But we've decided to get you a cup of coffee. And I'm holding up now, this is why people should be watching. I've got one in a mug with Tim Farron.
I know exactly what you're going to ask me.
And one with a mug with your friend Vince Cable. Which mug would you like to drink from?
I would sip equally from both mugs.
Would you like to take them both?
No, I don't think. I got my bottle of water without either Tim Farron or Vince Cable on it.
You won't take either mug? Apparently you were outselling both of them by the power of about 6-1.
Wow. That tells you something, doesn't it?
Briefly,
Yes.
It would seem to be a triumph up in Glasgow. Were you happy with the way it went? Because we must be your supporters listening, as they've all come back to their areas.
Yeah.
Job done?
No, look, I think it was a bit of a turning of the page actually for us as a party, because the last several conferences over the last 3 years I think have been characterised by quite a lot of worry about what's going on, how's the economy going, what kind of damage are we sustained by going into the coalition. It was quite a lot of introverted conference, which is quite right, because that's in part what parties sometimes have to do, to sort of try and slightly kind of look at themselves and work out what's going on. This one was much more outward facing, much clearer, really clear messages, some really good announcements on cutting down on the use of plastic bags, helping kids have good healthy meals at school. Very clear that we're going to stick with the economic plan but add our own Liberal Democrat views to it. In that sense it was great. 18-20 months before the general election, I really felt the party came together and said, right, we're up for the fight.
Okay, let's take some calls, and we go first to Deputy Prime Minister
Brenda in Putney, where I've just come from.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Clegg.
Hello, Brenda.
I'd like to know how you justify this free meal for 4 to 7-year-olds in schools, starting, I think, next September, when it is being paid for by policies such as the bedroom tax, where people, vulnerable families, very often elderly people, sick people, are being put under huge financial pressure and burden as a result of that. So I'd like to know how you justify it.
I justify it on several counts. Firstly, for millions of families in this country at the moment, there's a real squeeze on living standards. People are worried about paying this winter's electricity and gas bills. Every penny counts. And for families with children at primary school, having to pay for, if you're not on free school meals, having to pay for the lunch costs for your son or daughter can cost up over £400 a year. So it's firstly it really helps ease the squeeze. Secondly, and in many ways perhaps just as significantly, is that the evidence where we've tried this has been tried out in Durham, it's been tried out in parts of London, it's been tried out in some other countries. In Finland, they've been doing this for years. It has a dramatic effect on improving the educational performance of all children in the classroom, and it really helps close the attainment gap between children from more disadvantaged families and those from more affluent families. It's worth remembering, Brenda, that 4 in 10 children who are categorised as being in poverty do not presently receive free school meals. So this stuff that I've been reading about, that somehow this is some bung for people who don't need it, is utterly, utterly wrong. This helps a lot of people on middle and low incomes where children are not eating a hot, healthy meal, and that actually impedes their educational performance. So I think it helps in terms of easing the squeeze on people's living standards, but also it really helps making society fairer by giving children a really good start in life.
Brenda?
I'm afraid that I find that completely unconvincing. So as a result, you put some other families, some other elderly people, some other sick people without a hot meal instead. I think it's total nonsense. And it's very, very ironic for me, coming from a bunch of people over there in Parliament who've got loads and loads and loads of spare rooms. Should we say thousands? Probably many of them with property portfolios. Thousands of spare rooms which they can afford to pay for at the taxpayer's expense. So I'm afraid unconvincing, completely unconvincing.
Well, you may be unconvinced. I mean, I'm very happy to send it to you.
£600 million.
I'm very happy to send it to you if you like. There are lots and lots of studies which have been done to show what a very powerful effect this has on making society fairer. But look, I think by the sounds of it, Brenda, the real objection you've got is not so much to that, but is to the spare room subsidy. And on the spare room bedroom subsidy, the problem, as you know, is we've got about 250,000 families in the country living in very overcrowded accommodation where there aren't enough bedrooms, where kids don't have places to do their homework and so on. You've got 1 million households that have bedrooms more than they need. And as you know, previous governments, actually it was supported by Labour, who are now very critical of this approach, changed the rules such that you only get the housing benefit for the rooms you need in the private rented sector, and we're applying the same approach in the social rented sector. You're absolutely right that, of course, that this does mean that you get some hard cases, some difficult cases where people are caught out by the change in the rules, and that's why we've given tens and tens of millions of pounds to councils to help those households.
Okay. Lastly, thanks, Brenda. Lastly, £600 million this is going to cost your school lunch plan, and we've looked at even Premier League football players. Someone like Frank Lampard, who's got a 5-year-old daughter, he made £30 million last year. He's going to get free school lunches. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, look,
I'm sure he doesn't even want them.
Well, there are certain things we do in society that provide to everybody, right? So, for instance, all 3 and 4-year-olds, regardless of their incomes, of their families, get 15 hours free preschool support. The previous government introduced 12 years, we've expanded it to 15 years. There are certain things that we provide universally to people, other things that we don't. The evidence is...
Premier League football players don't need their children's school lunches paid for.
With respect, the Premier League football, the kids of Premier League footballers are such a tiny number.
Titans of industry, bankers.
No, but what we're talking about is how do you make sure that kids get the best out of school? How do we help those children on low and middle incomes who presently aren't getting free school meals? How do we help those families who are feeling really squeezed, who are paying over £400 a year for those lunch costs? And here's the thing: the evidence, and this has been looked at very independently, nothing to do with politicians, by academics and others, is that if you have all children, rich or poor, middle income or low income, eating together a hot, healthy lunch every day, it appears to have a very dramatic effect in making them all feel that they're in the same boat, they're being treated equally, and they also go on to concentrate well in the classroom in the afternoon. Next caller, Cliff in Cobham.
Oh, good morning, Nick. Thank you for taking my call.
Hello.
Good. Hello. Impressive speech, by the way.
Thank you very much.
I'm concerned about your proposals to raise income tax. And basically, in my situation, I'm earning a little over 100k, which a lot of people would think was a lot of money. But it's 30k comes off for tax. And my wife is in a home with Alzheimer's, and I'm paying 50k for that. So would you call that rich? Would you be increasing my tax?
Right. Cliff, what we the approach that we set out this week, but it's an approach. It's not to be clear with you, we haven't yet sort of crossed every T and dotted every I of our approach to every line by line tax policy. But what we've said is, look, we need to make the tax system fairer. It is the Liberal Democrats in government that have delivered the biggest tax cut in a long, long time by raising the point at which you pay your income tax to £10,000 as of next April. That's a £700 tax cut for every over 20 million basic rate taxpayers. So, in fact, far from increasing income tax, our record in government has been cutting income tax for the vast majority of taxpayers. And what we're saying is, we are interested in shifting the emphasis away from tax on income and enterprise and onto land and wealth. And that's why we do, for instance, stick to this idea of a mansion tax, a small 1% levy on the value of properties of £2 million or more. Actually, interestingly, this week at our party conference, it was quite an evenly balanced debate, but in the end we came out against, and the party came out against, restoring the 50p upper rate of income tax, because it reflects, I think, our wider attitude that we shouldn't get hung up too much about one single rate of income tax. We should try and make the tax system fairer by asking people with very significant, very high value properties and wealth to make a bit of an extra contribution.
Cliff.
Right, well, two things you could do to make it fairer. One is to perhaps consider care home fees to be tax deductible. And the second thing is, once you go over 100k, and a lot of people don't know this, for every £2 you earn, you lose £1 worth of your earned income allowance. So you're effectively paying over 60% income tax, which I'm paying if I earn any more money.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much more one would want to pay more than 60%, But that is a very serious anomaly for a lot of people as well.
Yeah.
And it's not a very well-known one.
No, look, Cliff, I'm
What
acutely
about that
aware
idea, briefly, Deputy Prime Minister, is the idea that you look at some of the suggestions that he made there?
Well, on the first one, I mean, the bit, this is not quite, well, it's related to care home costs, I guess. But as you know, we're introducing this big change, which won't come into place fully until after the next general election.
But the idea of tax deductible, that's
But hang on, this is the really big one, is that we're actually making it unnecessary for anyone to have to sell their home for their care costs by capping the total care cost that you have to shoulder yourself, and the rest is shouldered, if you like, by society, by the state. So that's following the so-called commission into Dilnot. So that's the biggest change we're doing. I don't want to pretend to you, Cliff, that I think on top of that, which is one of the biggest changes in kind of care costs that we face, that we're also going to change the tax treatment. But I am aware of what you're saying about the sort of what they call in the jargon, the tapering effect of the tapering of the allowance above 100,000. And as I say, we have been. I mean, this week my party's been looking at how we can make some of the tax allowance on pensions, on capital gains, and on property fairer. We haven't actually been making any great declarations on income tax, where, as I say, if you want to sort of judge us by our actions rather than our words, we have been now the most outspoken tax-cutting party when it comes to income tax by cutting income tax by £700 for over 20 million people.
Cliff, thank you for your call. Let's move on.
David in Boreham Wood.
Hello, Nick.
Hello.
Can I call you Nick?
Yeah, of course you can.
Nick, thanks for taking my call. I want to ask you how you feel about the Y word at football matches and the proposed banning of that word and Mr Cameron's comments on it this week. Personally, I think the Y word is the most obnoxious derogatory term you can call a Jew, and I'm a Jew, and I find it absolutely insulting and derogatory when that's even used anywhere in society.
Can I ask you, David, are you a Tottenham supporter?
No, thank God I'm not. No, I'm an Arsenal fan like you, Nick.
Yeah, well, look, this is so difficult. As you know, just let's focus on Tottenham fans using the Y word. This, as you know, Tottenham had a very strong Jewish identity, was actually very much at the forefront of sort of anti-Semitic campaigns and so on. And the fans will use that word with pride themselves. Now, I don't think, and I completely agree with the Prime Minister, and I think most people do, this isn't about the courts, this is not about, getting the heavy hand of the law getting involved. But I do think there's this issue about whatever the origins and however much those origins might be understandable. I have to say, if you're in a stadium, you're hearing thousands of people use that word, I can guess it must be pretty unsettling and unsettling and disturbing for others. So I just think, whilst I understand where this tradition came from, I personally think, I'm talking purely personal, I'm not talking about whether the law should be involved, because the Prime Minister's quite right. The law doesn't really get involved in this unless someone is using it to stir up racial hatred. But
the FA say even Tottenham fans shouldn't chant it.
Well,
are they right?
I think speaking personally, I think however people might feel justified in using the word, I think the word now just takes on a resonance for others where...
Even if you are a Jewish Tottenham fan?
Look, it's not for me to... I just think in this day...
You're a football fan.
Yeah.
You've got another Arsenal fan on. He happens to be a Jewish fella. It's as if you're meeting in a coffee shop. What do you reckon on this? And he calls you Nick. So David says to Nick, what do you reckon,
Because I'm not in a coffee shop. I haven't Deputy Prime Minister as much as I'd like to.
Ah, yes, you have seen through one hole in my argument.
So what I'm saying, David, I actually share your unease about it.
I have got the coffees.
I share your unease about it, but I don't think it's about getting the sort of heavy hand of the law involved. But I do think that however good the reasons were originally, I think the way that it is now perceived by other people is unsettling, is offensive, and that's why I do understand.
And so a Jewish fella can't do it.
Look, they're living in a free country. I'm not saying thou shalt stop using that.
No, but the FA says they don't even want Jewish fans chanting.
But the FA can't tell someone what words to use. They can say, look, this is now an offensive term for many people. Be careful how you use it. And I share that sentiment.
Can I come in on this?
David?
Yeah. Can I just put an analogy to you? Yeah. If I live in a block of flats with a black landlord...
Yeah, be careful. Please don't say the word that we
I'm
might
not going to say the word. No,
thank you.
No
Go
way.
ahead.
And if I know my black landlord and neighbours have been abused with the N-word, and as a white guy, I suddenly say, right, I'm coming out and I'm going to call myself that N-word, because I'm going to wear it as a badge of pride, yeah, and solidarity with my black neighbours, yeah. So therefore, I'm going to call myself this N-word, and I'm going to come on radio and say, I want you to refer to me as this N-word. I'm not using it in any way hatred at all.
Yeah.
Will you call me that N-word on radio?
No, of course not. No, listen.
Will you allow me that
Look, David,
word? Will the black people listening not phone in to complain?
Okay, let's let Mr. Clegg get in.
And David, I totally see what you're saying. I have a lot of sympathy, actually, with your own reactions. I'm trying to strike a very delicate balance here between saying this is not about getting the sort of heavy hand of the law involved. We got to recognise the proud history of why Tottenham supporters, Jewish Tottenham supporters, would use that word. I personally think it now takes on an offensive resonance.
So they shouldn't do it.
And I just think that, times change, and you need to reflect on the words you use as times change.
Those Jewish fans should not say that word. Should not say the word.
It's not for me to tell people what language to use, but I understand why people think that the word now should be used with much greater care than perhaps was the case in the past.
Colin on an email, Deputy Prime Minister, and sorry, David, thank you. Last night on Question Time, Shirley Williams criticised Simon Hughes' previous lack of support for free school meals on the basis he had no children of his own. Is this fair? Tim Loughton made a similar criticism of Sarah Tether and was roundly berated.
I didn't see what Shirley said. It's the first time I've heard about it, and Shirley and Simon get on very well. So I hope it's been taken out of context because they work very closely together.
You don't need to have children. Need to be a children's minister, or
no. I thought, well, Lord Lawton's remarks were just astonishing. Look, as I said to the earlier caller from Brenda, I think it was from Putney, there are really powerful cost of living reasons to do this. There are really powerful educational reasons, and it actually helps a lot of kids who are in poverty now who aren't on free school meals. So I think it's a big progressive thing.
On to more calls, Mr.
Colin in Newcastle. Hello, Colin.
Good morning, Mr. Clegg. How are you doing?
I'm all right.
I want to ask a question about Mr. Mitchell, but quickly on the last point.
Yeah.
I'm a black Tottenham fan,
yeah,
and the debate really should be about how black people, there's many groups, many actors use the N-word quite liberally across the media itself, and I've never heard anyone dare criticise the various people who are doing that.
Really?
Especially when this whole complaint originally came from Peter Herbert, who's the spokesman for the Black Lawyers Society. I've never heard him once complain about the N-word being used, like I said, in films, in music, and all the media.
It's a little bit difficult to go to the ground when he's not here to defend himself. I would think he'd have pretty strong views on that, though, Colin. So could I refer you back to the question that you have on the matter?
Yes, sorry, the original point.
Okay, thanks very much, Colin.
Yeah, it's no problem. My original point is, Mr. Clegg, do you think that the Conservative parties really should investigate themselves, because now they seem to be becoming a nasty party? And the reason I say that is that clearly you've got the Mr. Mitchell saga, where he's admittedly called policemen, or sworn at policemen using the F word. We've got William Hague, who's also called Labour MPs the F word, fat, old.
Right.
I won't use the X terms. And we've got Mr. Grove, who the other week was effing and blinding. Instead of maybe
I think Michael Gove, I think you mean. This is in the light of the Syria vote. But certainly what you do, stay on the line, Colin, is we are now just over the 12-month anniversary of what's known as Plebgate, where Andrew Mitchell, of course, he's admitted to using the F word with police officers, not the pleb word. And I think Colin's point is, are they becoming the nasty party again? Nick Clegg.
Colin, I think, listen, politics is a rough old trade. People say some pretty tough things about each other, and I've dished it out to my opponents. So I'm not going to sit here and be holier than thou, because, you give as good as you get in politics.
Are you concerned it's taken so long for the Met to come up with whatever did or didn't take place 12
months?
That's
a completely different matter.
Just out of interest.
Oh, look, the wheels of justice and police investigations do seem to turn quite slowly at times, and I've literally, of course, absolutely no idea about the rights and wrongs of all of this.
No, it's frustrating for Mr. Mitchell.
I totally understand if you're waiting for the police to complete their investigations, you want them to do it as quickly as possible.
Yes, it's frustrating for him that he still doesn't know.
Yeah, well, he's obviously waiting for the outcome of the investigation, so he wants that to happen as quickly as possible. I find that totally understandable.
All right, politicians say nasty things about each other. How much sympathy do you have for Nigel Farage this morning? He's waking up. It has been alleged that possibly as a young school lad down at Sussex, although he was at Dulwich College, he was away at Sussex for some reason, he wandered around chanting Hitler Youth songs. If that was true, how would you react?
Denies it completely.
He does deny it, absolutely.
He
says he can't remember.
If he denies it completely, he's got to speak for himself. And anyway, I have to say to you, I mean, obviously, he needs to answer to those allegations as such. But I don't. How can I put it? I don't. Other than in really extreme circumstances, I think it'd be pretty odd if we start judging politicians by what they did at school. I mean, God, if we go back to what who threw sand at who in the sandpit. I don't want to belittle what is being said about Nigel Farage, because of course Hitler songs is a sort of kind of category in its own, but he denies it completely. But I just think if we're going to start moving to a time where we start saying, "Oh, you said this when you were 12, therefore you're not fit now to occupy a public office," I think that would be probably a pretty unhealthy development.
Mr. Clegg, I've come to know you for some months. You're a politician who keeps his promises.
I went into Boots with 2 of my sons, so if you don't like I'll bring them my glasses next week.
Would you really?
I will show them to you. They have actually made a public appearance.
Have they?
Yes, they have made a public appearance. So I'm afraid it's not a world first.
Okay.
But I'll bring them nonetheless.
I'd love to see them. I'm sure your sons have great taste. And so, can we see the glasses?
Here they are. Here they are. They are strikingly similar to yours.
They are, actually.
They are.
But do your glasses...
No,
your sons wouldn't be able to
twisters.
Your sons wouldn't be able to destroy.
There you go. They are on.
They're on.
Do I have to now keep them on?
You look even more powerful and dynamic.
Really?
The choice is yours. You sure I can't interest you in one of these coffees, by the way? They're going cold.
No.
Honestly, I've got Tim Farron and
I don't like cold coffee. I don't like cold coffee.
You don't like cold coffee. I misheard you. I thought you said yeah. Right, other calls. On you go.
Emily in Welwyn Garden City.
Hello.
Hello, Emily.
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to know your opinion about, just recently there was a guy who got hit on the head with a brick and stabbed for the Grand Theft Auto game, and that there's a lot of talk about how dangerous these games are and how it can instill violence and a lot of copycat antics of the people that are playing the games for hours on end.
Have you had any personal experience of that, Emily? Have you? I mean,
No, I've got 2 sons, and I do see a change of behaviour when they play on the computer. 10 and 5.
Yeah. No. Well, funny enough, I'm with you on that. I see it with my son sometimes. They get onto these. I mean, not Grand Theft Auto game, but even for very small kids, they just get very, very wound up by these games, don't they? So you have to sort of try and ration them a bit. I mean, Emily, look.
If we come back to the 2 games, I think, Emily, of course, you may not have seen all of this, but it is reported that, well, indeed, someone had just bought Grand Theft Auto in Colindale, and within minutes he was also robbed of his mobile phone, but police say it could be linked to Grand Theft Auto. And then, of course, over in the States, you've got the man who shot the 11 people at the Washington Naval Base. It is reported that he would spend 18 hours a day playing Call of Duty. So there's concern about exactly the level of obsession people can get with these games. Deputy Prime Minister.
No, well, look, clearly these games can have an incredibly powerful, and I suspect in some cases corrosive effect on someone's behaviour, someone's outlook. They get shut off. They don't talk to other people. They just stay in their living room, their bedroom, hunkered down in front of their computer. They occupy a sort of hermetically sealed world, really, of their own, and that can have a very detrimental effect. It's incredibly difficult to know.
Should there be more restrictions?
Well, it's incredibly difficult to know what we should. Obviously, there are grading restrictions and so on, but it's in a free country, what do? Do you start saying to people they can't use it for more than X number of hours? No, you can't do that. There are of course restrictions around content, but we cannot limit people's use of certainly not in the amount of time they devote to this by law or by edict. I think people like Emily, myself, all parents, we've got a heavy duty on our shoulders, heavy responsibility on our shoulders, particularly for those of us who didn't grow up with these games. Yeah. So I sometimes look at what my kids. I don't sort of quite understand. I'm not.
It's an unknown world.
Yeah, it's a slightly unknown world. It's a slightly unknown world. Yeah. And so you're having to kind of grapple with that. So I like any parent of young kids, I try and get myself involved with them a bit, sit next to them, so I kind of see what they're doing. So
are you any good at the games?
No, not particularly.
Neither
particularly. But and then to really try and ration it as well, because I do think this kind of overuse does seem to sometimes
how many hours is suitable on a Saturday night or what?
Not much. I mean, not much. An hour and a half on a Saturday night.
And your lads, they're just playing football, presumably, in tennis and games like that, are they?
They're football, and there's a thing where they build. It's quite a good one, actually. I forgot what the name is. They build. It's quite very popular. They build buildings. It's quite
okay.
It's
Minecraft.
That's the one. Thank
that bright young man.
There. Minecraft.
That 11-year-old waving out.
It's Minecraft.
And you're good at that, are you?
No, not particularly good at it. But that's quite an ingenious game. Right. They get really absorbed with it. But it seems to be quite a good one as well, because they have to sort of build buildings in a sort of world.
Okay. Emily, thank you. A text question. Simon in Kent. Should schoolgirls of 11 be forced to wear the veil?
Forced to?
Yes. I think this is probably...
This is the flip side of the debate we had last week, of course, which has been raging since.
And indeed, I have to say, the college found for you more than they did for the Prime Minister. They were in accord with you, but subsequently it's been revealed by the Times newspaper there are 2 schools in London and I believe one in Leicester where girls the age of 11 have to wear the veil to and from school, so when they're travelling to and from their Islamic schools, and there will be no compromise on that.
Well, I have to say, my view, as I said to you last week and to the caller last week who rang about the policy at Birmingham College, is that no one should be forced to wear clothing against their will. People should be able to deploy choice, but there are clearly circumstances where the full veil is not appropriate. I personally think, as you know, in the classroom, we've got this debate now about
hospitals.
About hospitals. I totally understand that. If you're being examined by a clinician, saw some interviews with some clinicians. I think it was a dentist and an anaesthetist on the telly yesterday, women in the full veil, who said, no, we take our veils off because we understand that patients want to see our face. So I think you can be pragmatic in those circumstances. Airport security checks, and there was this case in the court as well.
So girls who are anaesthetists should, if the patient requires it, they should show their face.
Well, I thought it was very revealing that the women who wear the full veil were saying themselves, as clinicians, they understand why that's the case. So of course you've got to be pragmatic in those cases. But
should anaesthetists be required to show their face, Deputy Prime Minister? If I'm meeting my anaesthetist and my life is in her hands, surely I'm allowed to see her face.
Well, as Jeremy Hunter's rightly said, it's not for politicians to sort of dictate this, but he's asked the General Medical Council to provide guidance and for hospitals then to make their own decisions.
You must have a view.
Well, I do have a view, and views I just said.
God forbid it was you. What would you
I've just said my view. My view is I think it is right for patients to expect they can see the people who are examining them. But crucially, it's really important, by the way, that we don't start encouraging anyone to think that some sort of great, I don't want people to start taking matters into their own hands. I read, for instance, there was a woman who had her full veil snatched away from her, pulled away from her in the middle of the street when she's going about her own business. Someone going about their own business, just living the life that they want in our free country, should be allowed to wear the full veil. There are circumstances, hospitals, schools, courts, airport checks and so on, where I think everybody accepts you've got to be pragmatic. But we've got to, I think, protect the British attitude, which people should be free to wear the clothing that they want.
And an 11-year-old schoolgirl?
I don't think people should be forced when they're going about, in public, if they don't want to wear the full veil, from doing so. That is, if you like, of a piece with my liberal, dare I say, attitude that people should be free to use, wear the clothing that they wish.
So if the kiddie doesn't want to wear it, she shouldn't have to wear it.
If the 11-year-old does not want to wear it, actively does not want to wear it, I would defend her right to choose.
We have more calls, Mr. Clegg.
Is it Arno in? I better put my glasses on. Actually, hang on. Is
my writing.
Arno, or is it Arna in Whitechapel?
That's right. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm a young Muslim, and over the years I've met countless of other Muslims saying that they've been stopped at airports for no other reason that they have a beard or wear hijab. I myself have been stopped for 9 hours and missed my flight. So your party is given a clear mandate for Schedule 7 to be reformed. So I'd like to know what assurances can you give that real reform is indeed on its way.
I'm sorry,
for those who don't know,
thank you.
Schedule 7 is a provision in which allows the police to detain people, let's say if they're transiting through British airports, under terrorist provisions, and it was used to detain a partner of a journalist recently, and there was some controversy around that. There's a independent reviewer of terrorism powers, a very good man, a guy called David Anderson. He's entirely independent of government, and he looks at how terrorism powers, and of course, as you know, this is a complex area of law, a sensitive area of law, how it's being applied, is it being applied proportionately with good reason and so on. And he is conducting a review on the use of so-called Schedule 7, which is controversial, and it's controversial when it was brought into effect by the previous government. And I've said that if he makes a strong case and a compelling case and sets out his reasons clearly why Schedule 7 needs to be changed, because it might not be used in quite the way that it was intended, if he finds that, then I will certainly be inclined to listen to him and seek to make changes to Schedule 7 where he explains they're necessary.
Okay, if I may add something, Schedule 7 do not record the religion of people, but only the ethnicity. But it seems that 40% of the people that are being detained are being Muslims, and there's a very strong sentiment among young Muslims that is being targeted against them. And as you know, there's no need for reasonable suspicion. to be stopped under Schedule 7.
No, well, as you know, as you suggest, Schedule 7 has nothing to do with the faith of anyone who is detained under its powers. It is there to. It was designed to help the police address, take steps where they feel that terrorist activity is being planned or prepared and can be prevented. But as I say, David Anderson is looking at it right now. I think he's going to report in the next coming weeks. Let's see what he says.
All right, we've got time for one more question.
Monica in Finsbury Park. Monica.
Hello, hi. Hi, morning.
Hi, morning.
Hi, I want to know why the school uniform is so expensive.
Why school uniform is so expensive. Deputy Prime Minister, you presumably had to send out a few quid, I would imagine?
Yes, they are. And one of the things that we need to do, and my Liberal Democrat colleague David Laws just recently issued guidance to schools about this, is to encourage schools from moving away from kind of elaborate requirements for uniforms which puts up their price, and particularly these deals where you can only get the school uniform from one shop or one retailer, which often really increases the price, because that one shop or that one retailer can dramatically. Miriam went, I think, to one of the supermarkets recently, and you can, of course, buy shirts in particular, very good affordable prices now from
you get three for a £5.
It's good. But I think where it gets expensive is blazers with a badge on them, which you can only get from one retailer, and of course they then have got a absolute captive audience. So we are saying to schools, we've issued guidance from the Department for Education. We announced that at our Liberal Democrat Party conference just this week, is look, move away from that where you can. Don't have these exclusive deals with retailers. That should help bring the price down. OK, a couple of observations from me. Deputy Prime Minister, you see the publication of this book by Damien McBride, which is talking about briefings and counter-briefings with the previous administration, the fight between Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. What does that say about modern politics? Well, my head is spinning. It's like back to the bad old days, isn't it? So one newspaper got a bunch of emails and accusations and plots from one side of that feud, and then another newspaper's got front page revelations about emails and allegations on the other side of the feud. It shows how riven Labour was by sort of personality politics, by this factionalism. I think the challenge for Ed Miliband, strangely enough, is that he hasn't really kind of ever had to address that. But I think it's brewing there. You've clearly got some sort of Blairites in the Labour Party who want the Labour Party to be credible on the economy and not just to duck all the difficult choices. Then you've got another wing that says, no, we don't have to take any difficult decisions. We can just blame everything on the coalition. I think it's quite a big test for him next week to really find out whose side he's on. Has he got the courage to really spell out what the Labour Party would do and what difficult choices they would be prepared to take? Lastly, you're a keen European and Euro watcher. What's the best result in the German elections on Sunday for the UK? Oh, gosh, I don't think I should start making predictions. But what would be good? Presumably Angela Merkel is odds on going to win. She'll get the first. She looks in a very strong position. But how the rest of the coalition will be made up, anybody's guess. I think what I very much hope for as someone who thinks that a strong Europe is impossible without a strong Germany is that whoever's in power, really plays an active role in helping the rest of the European Union, the Eurozone, through these very, very profound economic problems it's had. And that doesn't happen without German leadership. You need German leadership for that. And by the way, that's not just good for the Eurozone, of which we're not a part. It's very good for us as well, because we've got so many millions of jobs depending on the prosperity of the rest of Europe. Thank you for bringing your glasses. Not at all. I'm sorry I couldn't interest you in a coffee. Now, I know you're on your travels next week, but I hope to at some point speak with you. Well, I'm at the UN next week, but I very much I hope we can sort something out so that I can ring in. All right. Okay. Happy landings. All right. Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg appearing here on LBC 97.3, where news is next.
Good morning, I'm Lisa Aziz. Nick Clegg has told LBC 97.3 it's not right that young girls should be forced